the first half of the 20th century, many cities across America used trolley systems to get their people to where they wanted to go, and Columbus, Ohio was no exception. Today, almost all traces of the former trolley system that ran through Columbus, Ohio is now gone. But at the Ohio Railway Museum, one of the last streetcars that ran in Columbus is still around. Columbus Street Railway 703, also known as Columbus and Southern Electric Railway 703, still resides at the museum today. Currently, ORM is wanting to restore 703 to operational condition, but in order to do that, ORM needs money, and this is where you guys come in. ORM has started a GoFundMe page to raise money for 703's restoration. The goal for the page is to raise $25,000 to cover the cost of the restoration. If you wish, you can donate as little or as much money as you can to the restoration efforts of 703. Even as much as $5 is appreciated. So, if you wish to see 703 back up and running again, go to https://www.gofundme.com/bring-703-back-2-life to donate as much money as you can afford. Also, if you wish to come visit the museum and see 703 or any other piece of equipment at Ohio Railway Museum, we are located at 990 Proprietors Road, Worthington, Ohio, and our open hours are from 12 noon to 4 p.m. each Sunday through spring, summer, and fall. I hope you guys come visit and see 703, and hopefully someday soon we'll see 703 back up and running. High hoods and GP30s. Now that's something you don't see every day. In this edition of Ohio Rail Excursions, we follow LM&M 55 and NKP 901 as they travel from Washington Courthouse, Ohio to Urbana, Ohio and back. Along the way, we see old stations, C&O 2776 and I&O 54, and many other things along the way. Today's date is May 26, 2018. A week ago, we chased the Ohio Rail Experiences Lima Limited as it ran from Springfield to Lima, Ohio and returned. That was covered in Volume 1. Today we are located at Iman Park in Washington Courthouse, Ohio, where we'll be chasing the Ohio Rail Experiences Spirit of Urbana as it runs from here to Urbana, Ohio and back. We first see the train as it pulls into the park to pick up the passengers waiting aboard. As you can see, this is the same train that pulled last week's Lima Limited, but now it's turned around. For the first part of our chase, we'll be chasing the train on the tracks of the former Detroit, Toledo, and Ironton Railroad from here till it reaches Maitland Junction in Springfield, Ohio. Then from there, we'll be chasing the train on the tracks of the former Erie/Erie-Lackawanna and New York Central. Once in Urbana, the train will then take the junction to the former Pennsylvania Railroad line to pull in to the PRR Urbana Depot. Soon the train came to a stop to let the passengers board. But before we start our chase, let's check out the other C&O locomotive in town, and I don't mean 55. Sitting on display at Iman Park is Chesapeake & Ohio 2776. 2776 is a K4 Kanawha class locomotive built by Alco in 1947. Although 2776's wheel arrangement classifies it as a Berkshire, the C&O prefer to call these locomotives Kanawhas. Unlike the Nickel Plate Road, where a majority of their 284s were built by Lima, the C&O preferred Alco-built 284s, having 70 in total, although they did have 20 Lima-built 284s. After a good run, hauling passenger and freight trains for the C&O, the railroad donated 2776 to the city in 1960. Sometime around 2016 or 2017, I'm not quite sure on the date, 2776 was redone and it looks a lot better now than it did just 3 years prior. After visiting 2776, we then began our journey. We first see the Spirit of Urbana crossing the Hops Railroad crossing just northwest of Washington Courthouse, Ohio. Here's a shout out to my friend Jake, who was riding the train today. He runs the YouTube channel Central Ohio Trains. His channel features trains running around Ohio, whether it's regular freight trains out on the main line or scenic tourist trains out on the branch lines. So if you want to see that, go to his channel and pay it a visit, and tell him I sent you. After seeing the train here, we then caught the train at the Bush Road Railroad crossing, just northwest of Washington Courthouse. Just to the east of the crossing is a small yard for the Indiana and Ohio Railway, where they have some cars stored along with 2 locomotives. So now let's talk some history about this line. Construction of this line began on December 7th, 1876, heading northwest out of Jackson, Ohio. Just 4 months later, on March 26, 1877, a second line started construction heading southeast from Springfield, Ohio. Then, just 4 more months later, that same year, the line from Jackson to Springfield, Ohio was finished. This line was constructed as a narrow gauge railroad by the Springfield, Jackson, and Pomeroy Railroad, which was founded on December 17, 1874. Then, on November 3, 1879, the SJ&P was sold to Oliver S. Kelly and was reformed into the Springfield Southern Railroad. During the Springfield Southern days, the line was converted from narrow gauge to standard gauge. Then, on May 23, 1881, the SSR was reorganized into the Ohio Southern Railroad. This is where we'll stop, since I've already covered the rest of the line's history back in Volume 1. Well, since we didn't talk about this in Volume 1, let's talk about the train's consist. Starting from behind Nickel Plate Road 901 is Southern 664, Fort Oglethorpe. 664 was built by the Budd Car Company in 1947 for the Central Georgia Railroad. Then, in 1963, it became part of the Southern Railway after they merged the C of G into their system. After the train passed Jeffersonville, Ohio, the train finally picked up speed, giving us a great chase. The baggage car behind 664 is Southern 543. 543 was built in 1942 by the St. Louis Car Company. Both 644 and 543 are both owned by the Southern Appalachia Railway Museum and were being leased for these excursions. Soon we arrive in the small town of South Charleston, Ohio. Back in the day of the Pennsylvania Railroad, this was where the PRR's east-west Pittsburgh-St. Louis main line crossed over the DT&I's north-south Detroit Ironton main line. From 1955 to 1981, the DT&I ran run-through trains to Cincinnati, Ohio from here, until it was switched to Maitland Junction between 1977 and 1981. Today, most of the PRR's Pittsburgh-St. Louis main line is gone, but just east of the former junction, a small portion of the line is still in use by the Sunrise Cooperative Inc.'s South Charleston grain facility. Also located at the former junction, on West Mound Street, is the former DT&I South Charleston Depot, which is now a museum, but it wasn't open the day we visited. Unfortunately, there was very little information on when this depot was built, but one source said that this depot was constructed between 1876 and 1877 by the SJ&P. Soon we get set up to catch the Spirit of Urbana as it passes the former DT&I depot. After South Charleston, we then paced the train along South Charleston Pike. After pacing the train down South Charleston Pike, we then moved to Lagonda Junction on the northeast side of Springfield, Ohio. Lagonda Junction is where the I&O's former DT&I main line crosses over the I&O's former New York Central Mechanicsburg branch line. Located on the south side of the junction is a former DT&I target semaphore signal. Unfortunately, I was not able to find very much information on this signal. Today, this signal is no longer in use by the I&O and has been fixed into the approach aspect by using the wooden blade and the broken lenses of the signal. The only other DT&I signal that's not only still here but still in service is located back at Washington Courthouse, where the old DT&I main line crosses over the former B&O. The only difference between the one here and the one in Courthouse is that the blade has been changed. Soon we hear the horn of our train and get set up for the next shot. then move to the northwest side of Springfield at a place called Maitland Junction. Maitland Junction is where the former DT&I main line crosses over the former Erie Railroad's Cincinnati-Marion main line. Today, the Erie line is now making up a small portion of the I&O's Bellefontaine branch. Soon we get set up to catch a train as it comes across Maitland Junction. As you can see, the Bellefontaine branch is protected by this gate. In order for trains to use it, railway personnel are supposed to stop the train and unlock and open the gate. Also, we are just west of Schneider Park, where last week's Lima Limited started. But unlike last week, our train will switch over to the Bellefontaine branch to continue its journey to Urbana, Ohio. At one time, there used to be a tower located here, but today, only the concrete foundations remain. Soon we see the train back down the connector track to get to the Bellefontaine branch. as the train rolls by, let's get back to the coaches of this train. The Mason 101, the Turtle Creek 103, and the Lebanon 104 are all former Delaware Lackawanna and Western MU cars built by the Pullman Company and the Edison Corporation in 1930. They used to have 3,000-volt, 230 horsepower DC electric motors, which were powered by overhead catenary wires. All the cars had their own cabs so that trains would be able to roll out when they needed to. Then, in 1984, these 3 cars, including an extra one, were sold by NJ Transit to the I&O. All the electric motors of the coaches were removed along with the catenaries, and also the cabs of these coaches were removed as well, with the exception of the Mason, which still retains its cab and was turned into a control car for the LM&M. As the train was getting on to the Bellefontaine branch, we then moved north of the junction where we caught the train again. The train came to a stop where we were at so they could close the gate. As soon as the gate was back into its place, the train left, bound for Urbana. After seeing the train, we then caught the train on the Route 68 overpass northeast of Tremont City, Ohio. From Maitland Junction, the train was on the former Erie line, but once it reached Tremont City Road, the train switched over to the former New York Central line, as most of the former Erie main line to Marion was abandoned. After seeing the train here, we then moved to the train's destination of Urbana, Ohio. The train will switch from the Bellefontaine branch to what is left of the old Pennsylvania Railroad, Columbus, Ohio, to Logansport, Indiana line, known as the Panhandle line, to reach the old PRR Urbana Depot. The depot was constructed in 1893 by the Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, Chicago, and St. Louis Railroad, which later became part of the Pennsylvania Railroad. The depot went through the hands of the Penn Central, Conrail, and the Indiana and Ohio when it was sold to the Simons-Kenton Pathfinders, which then sold the depot to the city of Urbana around 2007. Today, the depot is now the Depot Coffee House, where you can get coffee, snacks, and other drinks. Soon we set up to catch the spirit of Urbana as it pulls into the depot, which probably hasn't seen a passenger train in a good long time.
People just drive through the gate and
Now let's talk about the last 3 passenger cars we haven't covered yet. The 89687 and the 1376 were built as kitchen cars by the American Car and Foundry Company in the 1960s for the U.S. Army. 1376 was numbered as U.S. Army 89679. Then the cars were later sold to Amtrak and turned into baggage cars. 89687 was renumbered to 1379, and 89687 received its number of 1376. Both cars remained on Amtrak until the 1990s, when they were then sold to the Cincinnati Railway Company. 1379 was then repainted back into its U.S. Army colors and given its old number back of 89687. It's now used as a rolling tavern for excursion trains like this. 1376 was turned into a power car. Milwaukee Road 3200 was also built by the American Car and Foundry Company for the Louisville and Nashville Railroad. The car was used on the L&N's Hummingbird, a passenger train that ran from Chicago, St. Louis, Cincinnati to New Orleans and Memphis. The Chicago section was operated by the Chicago and Eastern Illinois Railroad between Chicago and Evansville, Indiana. The car was then sold in the 1960s to the Pittsburgh and Lake Erie Railroad for commuter train service in Pittsburgh.
Get a picture of you, Big Jimmy.
After the P&LE, it then went through the hands of the Fort Wayne Railroad Historical Society and the Friends of the 261, where it probably got its Milwaukee Road colors from. It then went to the Lake Central Rail Tours and the Cincinnati Dinner Train before arriving on the LM&M.
Damn, I'm glad that's over. Thank you.
After the train pulled in, the passengers disembarked to either eat at the depot or go explore the town of Urbana. Just northwest of the Pennsylvania Railroad Urbana Depot, along the tracks, is the former Pennsylvania Railroad Urbana Freight Depot. Unfortunately, there was little to no information I could find on this depot other than what I just said. So let's talk about the railroad line our train just pulled in on. The line was first opened in 1853 by the Columbus, Pequoia, and Indiana Railroad. Then, the CP&I was renamed the Columbus and Indiana Central Railroad and was then merged with the Chicago and Great Eastern Railway to become the Columbus, Chicago, and Indiana Central Railway. Then, in 1890, the CC&IC, along with several other railroads, were consolidated into the Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, Chicago, and St. Louis Railway. Then, in 1921, the PCC and St. L was leased to the Pennsylvania Railroad. The two railroads would not merge until April 2nd, 1956, when the PCC and St. L was then merged into the Pennsylvania Railroad. Soon it was time for the passengers to reboard the train and head back to Washington Courthouse. And although looking to the north revealed sunny but yet cloudy skies, looking to the south revealed rain clouds, but that would not deter us. Then the headlights on 901 lit up and the train departed. As you're about to witness, as the train tried to cross the crossing, the gates would not go down, at least until the engineer blew the air horn to get the gates to go down. Getting back to the railroad line, the line then went through the hands of the Penn Central before becoming a part of Conrail in 1976. Over time, the line was slowly abandoned, and by 2005, most of the line was gone. As you can see, this portion of the line is still in use by the I&O to serve local industries around Urbana, Ohio.
people are bugging you.
I know. Alright,
We'll
see
you
ya.
down there.
See you down at the next one.
Probably.
We'll see you in Washington Courthouse.
It's been fun. Like, there goes the Jeep. There they are. You've been the highlight.
Yep. Oh dear.
Maybe we'll get clapped at this time, Sean, again.
Probably.
We'll see you down there.
See you down there.
They should be giving us beers. Where's our? I need a Bud Light, Jake.
I'll hook you up in Washington Courthouse.
Perfect. After the train departed the depot, we then moved to the connector track, which connected the former Panhandle line to the Bellefontaine branch. This connector track was probably put in during the Penn Central era. As we were looking for a spot to catch it, I just so happened to see this small wooden bridge from Mad River Pike. So we pulled over and went over to the bridge to catch it. Well, since we talked about all the other railroad lines our train has covered, let's now talk about the Bellefontaine branch. Construction of this line started in Sandusky, Ohio on September 17, 1835 by the Mad River and Lake Erie Railway, the first railroad chartered west of the Alleghenies. The section of the old MRNLE our train is riding on was constructed by 1849, reaching Springfield, Ohio. By 1851, the MRNLE had a line that ran from Sandusky, Ohio, south to Dayton, Ohio. Then, in 1892, the MRNLE was merged into the Cleveland, Cincinnati, Chicago, and St. Louis Railroad, more commonly referred to as the Big Four Railroad. By 1930, the Big Four was taken over by the New York Central Railroad. During the Penn Central era, most of the original MR&LE right-of-way between Sandusky, Ohio and Bellefontaine, Ohio was abandoned just before the Conrail takeover. Conrail operated the Bellefontaine branch until 1994 when it was sold to the I&O subsidiary Indiana and Ohio Central. The Mechanicsburg branch was also a part of that deal. Then, in 2004, the I&OC was absorbed into the Indiana and Ohio, which brings us to today. We soon arrive back on the old DT&I, located at North Bechtel Avenue crossing. Located at the crossing is this old DT&I signal. It would look better if its head was turned towards us. Soon we see our train round the bend from Maitland Junction and get set up for the next shot.
Probably. Well, his bathroom might go there now. Yeah, I'm gonna be late to get to her house. But you live in Marysville. You live in Marysville or something? Yeah. Oh, I was up there. I usually get up. I work a 12-hour shift normally, so I'm up pretty early anyway.
Remember those storm clouds back in Urbana, Ohio? Well, by now, since we were continuing south, we were pretty much heading into the storm. And as we were leaving Springfield, it began to rain. By the time we reached South Charleston, the heavens had opened up and it became a full-blown storm, but that did not stop us. We took shelter on the porch of the log cabin next to the DT&I depot. As the storm raged on, the Spirit of Urbana ran right through the station. The storm started to die down by the time we reached Jeffersonville, Ohio. Located at the Kenley Brothers Granary is Old I&O number 54, which is in no relation to I&O 55, which we've been chasing on the Spirit of Urbana. 54 was built in 1953 for the B&O as 726. 54 ended up on the I&O the same way as 55 did. Soon we see 55 come on by with the Spirit of Urbana. After a long, hard day of travel, the Spear of Urbana pulled back in to Washington Courthouse to finish the day.
Hello.
As soon as the train came to a stop, our journey came to an end. Well, I hope you enjoyed both volumes 1 and 2, and come take a ride on any of the Ohio Rail Experience's excursion trains. You can go to their website at https://www.ohiorailexperience.com for more information on upcoming excursions. And if you're watching this before September of 2018, there are currently 2 more excursions planned. Oasis by Daylight, happening on September 1st, and the Fireworks Train, happening on September 2nd. And if you're watching this after September of 2018, keep an eye out for more excursions like the ones we saw here. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed both Volume 1 and 2, and have a great day. See you later.